Yo, what's up guys, welcome back to another video. This is a reaction to 5 ways British and American train travel is very different. And this is one that I do know is very different because they're so different in either country. I mean, in England or the UK, I'd say, I don't actually want to say 40% of people use trains. Maybe not that much. It's probably not that high, but I mean, a lot of people use trains and rely on trains. I mean, when I go anywhere, it's basically on a train when it's basically out of my city. And you've got the ability to go to most places. I mean, you can't go to really small towns, but you can go to like towns and you can get the bus then from those towns to the smaller ones. So there's possible ways to get from place to place. And I mean, I would be screwed without them because I don't drive. I got to learn soon. But yeah, it's different in the US. I mean, most people at my age and starting from 17, 18, 19 will learn how to drive and then just that's how they get around. But it's a different world. And in terms of trains, I know there's long haul trains. I actually watched the video just in my own time a few months ago. I think I watched a few videos of people just going on like if it's the Amtrak trains, like from one end of the US to the other, and it's like sleeper trains, which I've never actually been on a sleeper train either because in the UK you're pretty much good because it's only going to be like a maximum, sorry, 6-hour journey, unless you're going right from the bottom to the top, and then that's probably like a few more hours, but it's a lot quicker, and you don't need these sleeper trains, but they look cool. But then in terms of shorter sort of distances, there's not many options in the US from what I know. So we're going to learn about it and see, and yeah, hopefully go to enjoy. Links also in the description to my Patreon, where there are movie reactions, and yeah, if you want to see some movie reactions of a movie that you want to see, and obviously I can't post it onto YouTube, you can suggest it on the Patreon, but yeah, links are there for those interested. If not, I'm going to jump into this.
Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to trains. Trains are a fabulous way of getting around, especially if you're the sort of person that likes looking at quickly moving trees. And as somebody with fairly extensive experience of train travel in both Britain and America, I'm here to tell you, as I often am, that both countries throw up many differences. And this is particularly true on train services.
See, is it Amtrak? I might be getting the name wrong, but these are like double-decker trains. This is wild to me. I've never seen a double-decker train in my life. These are massive.
Span the entire country as opposed to trains that serve a specific city. And it's each country's national passenger trains that I'll be focusing on today. Now, you've probably heard me mention before that one of the things that I miss the most about living in the United Kingdom is the comprehensive train system that can get you from and to most major towns and cities in the country. For instance, that's how I'd usually return home from Lancaster University on the west coast of England to my hometown of Grimsby on the east coast. And I wasn't alone. It's not entirely unusual for train services of this nature to be completely packed. But all up and down Britain, particularly England, there's quite a cluster of rail lines that are dedicated to passenger travel. And in total, if you were to add all of this up, it comes to about 10,000 miles of rail line. So how does this compare to the United States? Well, the total mileage of train track in the US is about 140,000 miles. However, most of that is for freight trains. Okay. And, you know, unless you are Indiana Jones, you're not going to be riding that as a passenger. Instead, the tracks that are used by Amtrak, many of which in fact are owned by the freight lines, come to about 21,000 miles.
So there's a lot more, which goes to show they obviously because the country's so big, they can't really just build all these different routes because it's just going to make so many more. It's going to cost so much, but also just the area that they're already using. Like you're comparing this to a country, obviously the UK is a lot smaller, or the countries in the UK are a lot smaller. But there's so many more train lines and stuff, but it's still even only half of what is in the US, which is crazy to think.
And you might be thinking, ooh, Lawrence, that's twice the amount of Britain. We win, go America. But then you have to consider the fact that the United States is about 40 times larger than the UK. So what's going on there? Well, of course, because of the immense size of the United States, there are many places in the middle of the country where not many people live. So the financial justification for a multi-tiered network of train lines just isn't there. Furthermore, if you want to get from, say, here in Chicago to Seattle, it's just much quicker to fly. And speaking of speed, the other really major difference between the train services in both countries is just how fast or how slow they go. Now, it's worth saying that neither country offers the kind of speed that you will find in some European countries as well as Southeast Asia, but the pace of Amtrak almost makes British trains look like interstellar space travel. In the past year, I've ridden on both Amtrak and the Trans-Pennine Express from Manchester to Grimsby, and there's definitely a notable difference.
Is this in the US? This looks bougie as hell. Oh, this looks. I mean, again, it's long haul travel, right? But this is looking nice. I mean, maybe it's not actually as long as I'm thinking, but
makes sense because in the UK, most trains get up to 125 miles per hour. In the US, most services run at less than 110 miles per hour.
Oh, they're slower.
And sometimes way less than that, especially since the freight companies own most of the tracks. Amtrak trains often have to come to a standstill just to let the freight trains go past. Moreover, the United States really only boasts one high-speed rail service in the entire country, and that's the Acela line on the East Coast. And that's because that service is a central hub of major cities like DC, Philadelphia, and New York City. And sure enough, it does go faster than most of the trains in the United Kingdom. And I say most because we also have an exception, and that exception is the Eurostar. This is the train that takes you from London to Paris, and it can get up to speeds of 186 miles per hour.
I've never been on the Eurostar, but maybe one day.
Now, it's one thing having faster trains, but how many people actually use them? Anecdotally, before I look this up, I would say substantially more people use the train in Britain than they do in the US. One reason I say that is that any time I ever rode a British train, it always seemed like it was packed to the rafters. Do trains have rafters? They do now. If you're wondering why I have this entire carriage to myself, it's because that week my wife and I got a deal on a first class ticket and nobody else seemed to do the same. So thank you.
Oh, this is first class. Okay, fair enough.
To my patrons for helping to fund that so that we could capture this B-roll. If you would like to become a patron of Lost in the Pond, you can do so today at patreon.com/lostinthepond.
Lovely.
But then when I thought about it, the same is often true with American trains. So what is the data on this? Well, if we were to look at the years prior to the pandemic, the number of passengers that you would see on an annual basis in the United States is roughly 30 million. Whereas in the UK, that number is a staggering 1.7.
Oh my God, that is a big difference. Flipping hell.
7 billion. So what are the reasons for this? Well, a large reason is population density. Britain simply has way more people per square mile than the United States. So this means that in Britain there's just a greater demand for people to get from one point of the country to the other. The other is automobiles. I mean, the United States has such a vast and comprehensive interstate highway system that trains, behind also planes, are far down in the pecking order. And because of this, there's also a massive difference between how frequently trains run in America versus Britain. Take, for example, the 4 to 7 hour train journey between Chicago and Indianapolis. If for whatever reason you're running late and you happen to miss the train, it's no problem, just wait and catch another one the next day. That wasn't genuine advice because I don't know how refunds work for that. But in Britain, owing to the greater demand, train services run multiple times a day.
Every hour. I mean, depends. Some are even more often, but nah, I'd say every hour or every 2 hours, or depending on how much people want to go there, pretty much. I'd say every hour is the sort of average, though.
Not only that, they're always packed. But in 2022, if the same thing happened in the United States, where trains were running from Chicago to Indianapolis several times a day, there'd be a lot of empty seats. People would sooner drive because it's just so much quicker, although you do have to take I-65. So because of the relative limitations of American train travel, does this mean that it's cheaper to travel by Amtrak than it is by the trains in the UK? And the answer to that is an absolutely resounding sort of. You see, it's quite hard to make a comparison because ticket prices fluctuate on either side of the pond. But in the United States, I'd say you get a bigger bang for your buck if we're talking about the amount you pay per mile of track that you travel.
Probably.
And this might not be surprising to my British viewers. After all, it is famously expensive to travel on British trains. And some might take the view of, oh, Lawrence, isn't that just British people moaning again? Well, no, apparently, according to a study, the average cost of a UK train ticket is about 30% more expensive than other European countries.
Other European? Oh, God, we are getting scammed.
Let's say you buy a single ticket from London to Edinburgh. At the speeds that train goes at, the journey time is about 4.5 hours. And just looking on the National Rail site this morning, you could be expected to pay for that single ticket between $100 and $200 US. Could be even higher than that on other days. It's hard to say. Now let's look at a single ticket for Chicago to Seattle, which takes, and I'm not making this up, 46 hours. So almost 2 entire days on a train. But here's the plot twist. According to Amtrak's website, 150 to 250.
Oh, I mean, it's good money, but that is a long time. That's just from Chicago. That's not even from, like, the furthest point in, like, Florida or, like, New England or something. God damn.
$. But you are on the train for 10 times as long, thus getting more of their service. Of course, when it comes to this, you'd rather get from Chicago to Seattle much faster, hence the price disparity. But now that I've cut through the data, what's it actually like to ride on these passenger trains? And honestly, despite its limitations, I quite like riding on Amtrak. It's comfortable, decent if pricey catering service, internet access, outrageous views of the American landscape. And I think you could more or less take everything I just said and apply it to Britain. The only major...
Yeah, the trains are getting better. There's still older trains that are not as nice to go on, but now they've been rehauling them. I don't know, whatever. Rehauling them? Rehauling? Is that like when you're replacing them with better things? Not rehauling. What's the word? Just basically, they've been putting newer trains out, like, and they're just a lot nicer. A lot nicer, to be fair. Like, they're comfortable sitting on. There's aircon. I prefer to go on them than actually go in the car because, I mean, I don't drive, but typically if you get there at a certain time, you're probably going to get there quicker because it's just a direct link. So you don't have to, like, worry about traffic or roadworks or collisions or just the distance in general is still a lot further. And it's comfortable. You don't have to do anything. You're just sitting back. Again, it's costly, so maybe that's the drawback, but the game's a game. You got to, like, you get some positives and negatives together.
The difference I can think of, other than the ones that I pointed out in this video, is, and this is anecdotal, I think you're more likely to get a table seat on British trains than you are Amtrak. But I don't have any data to back that up, just experience. And that's British versus American train travel in a nutshell. When I first moved to the US, I had no idea that its train network wasn't as comprehensive.
When I started doing these reactions, I didn't realise that. I just thought trains were sort of just the function of most countries, and I mean they still are to a degree with like the other trains, like the cargo trains or whatever. But in terms of people and stuff, I mean I know like certain countries rely on trains a lot as well, but I just didn't realise it wasn't like this in the US. That the focus was on cars, and that's just how most people got around.
Or as fast as the United Kingdom. And I've only gotten used to that idea by understanding why and accepting Amtrak for the beautiful, leisurely thing that it is. I'm Lawrence Brown.
Well, there we go. Trains, baby. Oh, there's a train strike when he put this video out in the US. This is a very there was a very comprehensive passenger rail network in the US well into the 1950s. It was mostly dismantled over the following decades because, as you point out, the government built the world's largest automobile expressway system and kept motor fuel taxes and therefore prices some of the lowest in the world. But surely if they just kept that and then just done this at the same time, it would have been fine. I mean, maybe they just thought if we were going to build this expressway system or whatever, then it wouldn't make sense to have the trains because they'll be taking up a lot of the people who would be driving. So I guess that does actually sort of make sense, but it is what it is. Took Amtrak today. It's really fun going from the super fast part of the northeast regional, zipping past cities, to slow section poking through Virginia countryside. Definitely the nicest way to do a trip from New York to Virginia though. Sounds fun. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this reaction and let me know your thoughts if you ever use trains. I mean, there's probably some people in the US watching right now, some of you watching right now that have maybe never been on a train. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. I mean, with how it sort of comes across, that probably is the case. But yeah, let me know if that's true or not. Maybe it's not, and I'm overreacting or whatever. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed, and until next time, subscribe. Peace.